Alright, in this lesson here, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at decorations, or what is also known as DecoLayers. Go ahead and take it away, Logan.
Well, decorations it's the process of taking a static mesh and having it distributed or scattered across your surface. This is an interesting way of adding like weeds or grass to a terrain. And to do this, we'll simply go over to the Decorations tab, and we need to create a new DecoLayer. So we'll go ahead and hit New. Now, we've got a DecoLayer, but there's obviously some stuff we're going to need to set up. There's no static mesh that we're going to be scattering across the surface, and it doesn't know how to place it. Now, basically, the placement of the static mesh across the surface is based on yet another map. It's called the density map. It takes yet another grayscale, or the alpha of an RGB A8 texture, and uses the values in that grayscale or alpha to decide where your static mesh should be placed. So first, let's go ahead and just assign this a static mesh real quick so that it's set up. Let me grab static meshes, and let's see, how about we load tower static and switch on over to rock, and from rock we have tree shrub. Nice little tumbleweed that's not tumbling looking mesh. Now, that's the mesh we want to use, and it's assigning it to this DecoLayer is as simple as right-clicking and saying set static mesh from current, and then now shows which static mesh is going to be used. Now, we need a density map. We need to be able to tell where we want these meshes to exist. Now, we could bring in any form of grayscale map we wanted to use, but since we already have the ability to paint on layers, you saw in a few lessons ago how we could easily assign or easily edit the alpha or grayscale of a layer. What we can do is we can actually use a layer's alpha for the density of a DecoLayer, meaning that we would have the ability to paint where we wanted our decorations to appear, which is very nice, very quick, and very handy. In order to do that, we'll create a new layer, and then we'll assign it to the base, so it'll never actually be seen texture-wise. It'll only be used for the alpha for the decoration's density map. So go ahead and click on an undefined slot, and let me make sure I have a texture selected, even though the texture is kind of irrelevant. It's not going to be seen. Go ahead and hit New, stick with my level, and I'll call this one DecoLayer 1, with less Y's and more R's. Now, the alpha fill, I'm going to go ahead and let it start out as black or completely transparent, so there will be initially the decoration won't appear anywhere. That way I can start and specify where. If we had made that white, it would appear everywhere on the mesh, and we'd have to kill it out from where we didn't want it. So I'll simply start with transparent and work our way up where we want decorations. The U and V scale are pretty much irrelevant, since the only information we're interested in is the grayscale itself for the density map. So DecoLayer 1, go ahead and hit OK. Now, I want to go ahead and make sure I move this all the way back to the base so that everything else is applied above the DecoLayer, since we're only using its information over in the Decorations tab. Now, to go ahead and set this all up, I'll just right-click and say Set Density from Current Texture, but just to make sure it really is the current texture, and a good point is, as we showed before, the actual height map, if you go over to the My Level package, My Level, and we've got some of the various maps and layers we've been using. If we scroll down, we should find Hunting, DecoLayer 1. With that actually selected as a texture, we can go into the Decorations tab, then set Density from Current. So we're using the alpha from this texture for our density map. And the reason we've set it up like this is, of course, so we can use layers and paint on DecoLayer to paint these shrubs we selected into existence. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to, what will look like, start painting. I'll grab a little bit of radius, set the strength all the way up so I have a little bit of brush. So now I've got layers selected. And it's also important to note that if you're using a layer to define a height map and you paint on that layer to, in effect, paint your decoration, make sure you actually are on the Layers tab and painting on the desired layer, not painting on the Decorations tab. This can cause problems. So with this layer selected, let me just paint out in this open area a little bit. But notice that as I paint, nothing really happens. I mean, it may affect the shadow maps a little bit, but we don't see any meshes at all. there is a very key setting that must be set first. Decorations have a visibility radius, meaning that if they're too far away, they won't draw. This, of course, saves on speed when you're playing the game. By those values default to 0, so they don't show at all. We need to go ahead and edit some of the terrain info's properties before we can continue, so we can actually we'll set up a visible range so that we can see the mesh as we paint. I can actually leave terrain editing selected. I'll use the find actors and search for the terrain info. Double click to select it. Then I can bring up its properties, and I need to hunt down that deco layer. So under terrain info, and we'll actually be going over some more of these properties just to show some of the basically the hidden stuff that terrain is able to do. Some interesting properties that add a little bit more power to working with terrain. Anyway, back on topic, DecoLayers. And since in the Decorations tab we added a deco layer, we have an element in the DecoLayers array. Expand that, and we have a whole bunch of properties. Well, again, we'll look at a few of these more in just a minute. But first, fade out radius. This is what I was talking about, where a certain decoration is only visible within a certain radius, and outside of that radius it starts to fade off. What minimal will do is anything within the minimum radius is completely visible, and once it fades towards the max radius, it gets more transparent and finally fades out completely. I'm going to set this quite high just because this is more of a demo map and we're not too worried about performance. You'll want to play with this a little bit to make sure that the decoration isn't too heavy on gameplay if you're making an actual playable map. So for the minimum, I'll set this all the way up to, say, 4,000 and set the max to 6,000.